All right, folks, welcome on into another edition of the High School Huddle, your one-stop shop for everything and all things Section 5 sports. I'm AJ Feldman, he's Carl Jones, and last week we made this whole big deal. We're going to be back here every Thursday. Every Thursday we'll have you covered with high school sports. Well, then we forgot that they played like all the games yesterday because of Rosh Hashanah and the refs. So we had to go about everywhere covering some games. Didn't have time for the huddle, but we are back on a Friday. It is Friday, September 15th. And we are ready for the weekend. We are ready for another edition of the High School Huddle, Carl.
Yeah, it threw me for a loop. I'm not gonna lie. Like my whole mental clock, body clock, whatever you want to call it, just didn't feel right yesterday. I'm like, yo, hold on. We're doing a huddle on a Thursday. I'm supposed to be like tired. Now I'm looking forward to college football on Saturday. Now I'm like, wait a second. Like ain't nothing going on the next day. But it is what it is. Maybe if y'all stop yelling at the refs, we'll be all right. But nonetheless, I always take more football, spread it out. I'm a big, obviously, as y'all know, football my sport, so I ain't complaining in that regard.
Yeah, every week, or just about every week in Section 5 this year, one of the classes has to go on either a Thursday or a Saturday because they just don't have a refs to play every game on Friday. So this week, all the Class A's were getting on that variable format. Most of them went yesterday. Two teams are facing off on Saturday. We also had McQuaid and Aquinas play their games today, presumably because of Rosh Hashanah. So a lot of games last night. We had a good frenzy for you, even though the offenses, it was a show for the defenses. We'll put it that way. We won't talk about the offenses in some of these games. We'll talk about the defenses.
I mean, look, highlight purposes, rough. But I mean, shoot, as someone who loves some good old defense, I wasn't complaining too much in that regard. But for my camera's sake, I was like, man, do y'all want to be on TV? Come on. I know y'all want to make y'all mama proud and be on News 8 tonight. But yeah, it definitely was some low-scoring games for sure.
Yeah, it was a lot of grudge matches, not even like interceptions back and forth, things of that nature, yada yada. But good old-fashioned football on a somewhat chilly September night. It got down a little bit. I only had the spring jacket, but we made do. But either way, we're moving on. We've got our first set of high school New York State Sports Writers Association rankings. We've got them in boys soccer. We've got them in football. First, we're going to dive into the boys soccer rankings for a quick second because we haven't talked a lot of boys soccer on the show just yet. These rankings have come out from class AAA. Let's not forget about the AAAs, as we talked about a lot last week. AA and A. They're going to do the small school rankings next week. So we start with class AAA, where there's not many teams in Section 5 in general, and we only have one in the rankings, and that is Fairport at number 5. When these rankings were published on September 10th, they were 3-0-1. They are currently 4-1-1. Off to a nice start to their season, 3 shutouts so far on the year. They've got wins over Brighton, HFL Penfield. They won last night against Victor. Did suffer a loss to Hilton. Then had a draw with Churchville Chili. So a good start for Fairport. Another thing to note is that McQuaid is not on this list so far. Made it all the way to the state championship game last year. Perennial powerhouse in boys soccer, not in the initial rankings. However, they've only played 2 games so far this season. They tied Aquinas, and they lost a close one to Christian Brothers Academy out of Syracuse. So I'm sure we'll see McQuaid pop up in these rankings as they start racking up some wins so far this season.
And then down in AA, we got 2 teams as well. Spencerport coming in at 6, and then Hilton at 12. Spencerport defense leading the way so far. 3 shutouts. I believe they're 5-0 this year. Sectional champs last year in A, so they're bumping up to AA this year because of all the classification changes and who going up, down, or whatever you want to call it. So Spencerport 6 so far, and then Hilton dropped one last night. Excuse me. So they're 4-1 coming in at 12th. Lost to Thomas, so I'm sure that number will change by the time next week's rankings come out. Also, 3 shutouts, so the defense is pretty stout so far. But yeah, 2 teams in AA, decent showing so far for Section 5 in that classification.
Yeah, and as we just mentioned, Hilton with a victory over Fairport, so a really strong win. They've won 2 years ago, I believe it was. They were sectional champs and made it to the state Final Four, if my memory serves me correctly. So a lot of firepower in that Hilton squad, coming back, getting some state ranks. And then in Class A, we've got 2 teams from Section 5, Aquinas at 3-0-1 on the season so far. As we mentioned, the tie to McQuaid, a quality showing. Then they beat Brighton. They beat Canisius out of the Buffalo area, a really strong program in most of their athletics, so a nice win. And then at number 13, we've got The Wayne Eagles, a team that is always feisty in the regular season, hasn't been able to replicate that success as much in the postseason. However, so far, a good start to their season. They've played 3 games. They haven't given up a goal, which by my calculations is pretty good. And they opened up their season with a 1-0 win over Mendon, which is another pretty strong soccer school, is another team that they're going to see in those Class A playoffs. I believe it's who they lost to. It was maybe one of the Pittsford schools. I forget exactly who, but Mendon's always a team that's always in the mix. So to start their season with a 1-0 victory over the Vikings, that's a pretty good start for the Wayne Eagles.
Yeah, especially because the talk about them is how maybe their regular season schedule isn't so strong, and then they go into the postseason, and now they're up against the rest of Monroe County. But that's win over Mendon. They nipping that narrative in the bud real quick.
Yeah, so we'll get the girls soccer rankings coming up for you next week. I assume they will release those. We'll have that breakdown for you. We also had some football rankings. Not going to spend too much time on this because a good chunk of these teams have already played a 3rd game since this went out. And as we'll note later on in the show through this segment, the state rankings aren't exactly super accurate this early on in the season. But we will start in Class AA, where there should be no surprise who is at the top of these rankings for Section 5. You've got UPrep at 9th overall, McQuaid at 20th. McQuaid just probably docked for not playing a super strong schedule. However, they did get a really nice win over Fairport last night. Down early, came back, held on at the end. Fairport, as we talked about last week, I think is proven me right when I told you guys that they were going to be in that second tier, that 3rd, 4th, banana type of role. And then UPrep at 9th overall. They got a nice win over Canandaigua, a perennial powerhouse program. Maybe a little bit down this year, but still a nice win for UPrep. So UPrep and McQuaid at the top, not too much of a surprise to see that to start off the season.
No, not at all. I mean, I haven't personally seen UPrep so far, but based off of the results I've seen, it's a pretty darn good squad over there. And then McQuaid, per usual, Will DeMarco back there at quarterback, slinging the rock. They got some dudes. Who's my man? The running back, little dude, John Harding. He's tough too. He's tough too. I swear, if you got a McQuaid guy, just know that you're gonna call his name. It is what it is. I feel like that's been like 2 years running at this point with the Knights. But yeah, no surprise at all. Those 2 teams are at the top.
Yeah, Will DeMarco slinging it with number 80 or 88 or whatever on his. I'm so mad because I talked to him at the start of the season, and all their practice jerseys say number 1. It's not, they don't have their actual practice jersey numbers. I would have remembered, and I was so mad when I got back and I forgot to ask him. We heard from Dave Yates, it was just kind of the number he was given, but I was so mad that I forgot to ask him why he wears that number. So hopefully I get out there to McQuaid. I can ask him again later on in the season. Moving over to Class A, Victor coming in at number 8, 2-0. We're not going to talk about it too much because spoiler alert, going to talk about them later on in the show. And at number 18, East at 2-0. They moved to 3-0 last night with another convincing win over Spencerport. These 2 teams, they do not play in the regular season, but I think they're on a bit of a collision course for a Class A championship game. You've also got strong teams. Canandaigua is going to be in the mix. Schrader's going to be in the mix, but East and Victor is going to be a really fun battle. Hopefully we get good weather because last year in those Class A championship games, the weather really dictated that. But those 2 teams have a lot of strength in different ways. But they're going to be fun if they meet up later in the season.
Like we say on this show, a lot of styles make fights. And boy, 2 contrasting styles between those teams. You got a track team. Not saying Victor doesn't have some dudes because they do got some dudes that can fly as well. But they're more hit you in the mouth, physical, grounded out a little bit. Man. Like you said, weather permitting, that's one of those games that I would love to be at.
In Class B, we only have 1 team ranked so far, Batavia, 2-0. They're going to take on HFL tonight, so a pretty good test for them. The Blue Devils. Not ranked so far is Monroe, which is the reason why I say that these rankings don't hold a lot of merit so far, because Monroe should probably not even be just ranked, in the teens, in the single digits. Monroe's got some dudes.
Yeah, and that's just putting it lightly. I'll talk about them later on in the show. Some dudes with a capital D over there for Monroe.
And then in the smaller school brackets, we've got Attica Alexander, the defending sectional champs, starting off strong with the number 1 spot in the entire state in Class C. They're going to play East Rochester Gananda tonight, which should be a really good game out in Attica. They're at number 9th overall. Down in Class D, you've got the Aggies, of course, Oakfield, Alabama, Elba, strong for many years. They're at number 3 at a 2-0 record. They also got Canisteo Greenwood moving up from 8-man back into Class D. They're tied for 15th overall. And then in 8-man, Section 5 has done really well in the 8-man, the sectional, intersectional tournaments that they've done at the end of the season. Pembroke had a really strong season. Tyson Totten back once again. They're at number 1. Boulevard Richburg, number 3 overall. So a lot of, as usually is the case with Section 5, a lot of strong representation in our smaller classifications.
If y'all want to see a funny thing, make you laugh a little bit, go look at some of Tyson Totten's numbers that he drops weekly. I mean, it makes no darn sense. And I know the numbers are skewed, 8-man, less players on the field. I get it. But if you still want to get a little chuckle, see what he's doing down there at Pembroke. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and you saw him in week 1, and I've seen him in the past. The numbers make it seem like it's, flag football or something like that, Madden. But these are dudes, the top guys in 8-man who could play in any classification. They're just, they're football players. We don't like to talk down on Class 8-man at all. I'm a big fan of it, and especially a fan of guys like Tyson Totten.
Yeah, he running through you, over you, around you. It don't matter. He give it to you however you want it. Tyson Totten, big fan here from over here at Channel 8.
So we will see how these state rankings progress. Eventually, we will get back into our local rankings in Section 5. That'll be coming up for you a little bit later on when we get a little better grasp of how these teams really rank out. Time now to move on to our Team of the Week segment, a team that's caught our eyes over the past couple of weeks, 2 games in some instances. Carl Jones, your Team of the Week for this Friday, September 15th.
Yeah, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, the Monroe Red Jackets. We hyped up the game last week that they were going to face HFL, and we got there, we saved it for my last game of the night. Like, all right, it's going to be a competitive game. They won 54-6. I mean, there's not enough great things that I can say about this team. You knew going in they had some athletes. I mean, they have a guy who's a sophomore who has a Penn State offer. Unheard of. We talked about that last week, Messiah Hampton. Styles McKenzie Baker is another underclassman who has a fair share, a lengthy offer list for a high schooler, and boy, they took it to HFL. And it's not just their skill guys. I mean, they're good in the trenches as well. They had a decent amount of TFLs, just wrecking havoc, making the Cougars' night just really. They were really uneasy the majority of the night. Just some stats to show how dominant they were. Kaya Moses, the quarterback, 311 yards on just 13 completions, 4 tutties through the air. Amari Colon was this week, I guess you can say, stat stuffer from the receiving room. 168 total yards, 3 tutties. Messiah Hampton, as I alluded to earlier, the sophomore that has a Penn State offer, 5 catches, 123 yards. I didn't even mention Styles McKenzie Baker. He was out there. I just don't think that A, threw his way, and then B, got a lot of targets because when they did get the ball to somebody, they took it to the house. And then Jovan Bennett also had 2 tutties on the ground. Really strong team from Monroe. Like I alluded to last week, I believe, this is a team who they want to win a brick, but they were really confident in going beyond that this year. And boy, they got the talent from my eyes to maybe make some noise this year in the postseason. This Saturday, the 16th, they'll be taking on Rochester Prep. I'm really looking forward to next week, though. They'll take on Batavia, rematch of last year's sectional title. I'm already knowing they're going to get up for that one, just like the Blue Devils aren't going to lay down either. Boy, can't wait for that one. But nonetheless, what they did last week opened my eyes up. Shout out to the Monroe Red Jackets, my team of the week.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see over the next couple of years if these kids kind of stay at Monroe, because, a guy like Messiah Hampton, who is just a sophomore, like you mentioned, the Penn State offer, he's already got offers from Syracuse, West Virginia, UB, things like that. So he's got a lot of offers. Hasn't been too frequently the case that these guys stay here in Section 5. They go off to prep schools, they go off to California, smart decisions on their part if it gets them the offers, get the eyes on you that you need, especially a team that in Monroe, which is it is very good, but at the same time, it's still facing Class B teams. So, I'm sure plenty of other recruiters are going to look at his stats. They're going to look at his numbers. They're going to look at his tape and, all right, congrats. You're doing this against Class B teams in New York State. So, it's going to be, one to watch whether or not these talented athletes, these really great football players stay here at Monroe or try their options elsewhere.
he has a good frame too. I don't have his size right in front of me, but that's a nice, well put together dude to be a sophomore out there. He's also played safety for Monroe. I know when I was playing receiver in high school, I usually look back at the safety and see how big he was and how he was roaming. He one of those guys where I'm like, all right, make sure we not leading me high and dry over the middle because I ain't trying to get hit.
Yeah, I've got him at 6 foot on 247 and 6'1" at Rivals. So for just a sophomore, he's got some time to maybe bulk up a little, but still it's a good start. So yeah, Monroe's look good so far. They're gonna look good for the rest of the season as well. My team of the week, the Victor Blue Devils, saw them last night in a really good clash with Schrader, a good Class A battle. If you forgot, well, we just mentioned it like 5 minutes ago, so you shouldn't have forgotten. But Victor is down in Class A this year, kind of taking over that Hilton role from last year where they kind of, powered some teams around coming down from Class AA to A. But Victor and Schrader, that was a really good football game. It was 14-12 after the first half. Schrader in the lead. Then the Blue Devils defense locked down, held Schrader scoreless, which is no easy task. Schrader has some really talented wide receivers. They can get it done. They did get it done in that first half. They had some really nice plays. Tyler Washington had a touchdown where it was just a very impressive play. I wasn't there for it, but I saw it. It was, the fade route in the corner of the end zone. Could not put it in a better spot. No fault to the DB there for giving up that touchdown. They had 2 of those in the first half. I'm trying to pull up the second name right now to give him some credit. Justin Meyer. Yep, that's right. He had just bounced off a defender after making a pretty nice athletic catch for the touchdown. But then the Victor defense locked down. They got it done with their running game. Dre Yomis ended up with 15 rushes for 146 yards and the touchdown. Set up the game-winning field goal by Mason Overton, where he just carried the entire team on his back, plowing through defenders, getting dragged down at the 2-yard line. They did go backwards, so they had to settle for that field goal. But a really nice game for him. The thing with Victor, which, is kind of the norm for the Victor teams in the past. They play really good defense. They can run the ball really well. Yomis, Adam Ruffalo had a good game. It's can they win with just that? They do have, they have the ability to throw the football, but it's certainly not as much as East can throw the football. We've seen Schrader throw the football more prolifically. So it's a styles makes fights type of team where they're really good up front. They're really good defensively. They're really good at the run game. Can that be enough to power them to a title like Hilton did last year? I think it can be. I think there's a really good chance it can, but that'll be one thing to watch as we move forward in the season.
I think it can this year, especially in Class A, where maybe the teams aren't as strong up front. In Class AA, you got some big boys up there. And just like you just mentioned, Hilton, although they're a really darn good team last year as well. I mean, Robert Lowry, I forget the other back. It was a two-headed monster last year they had back there in the backfield. But they ran their way to a sectional title, due in large part they were in Class A and they were allowed to say, you know what, we dare you to tackle us type of deal right there. And Victor's the same way. Nick Leonard is also the tight end, big boy. I know he has some college love as well. So maybe not a prolific passing game, but I know some nice pop passes over the middle, give it to him, dare the safety to tackle him in space. But yeah, Victor, I saw them week 1 against Rush and Rieta. Hey, we dare you to come downhill and tackle us, and we dare you to run on us. Like, they're that type of team, and I respect those teams who know who they are and want you to do something about it.
Yeah, Jeffrey Broadnack's the running back for Hilton last year, and you've really got in Class A, you've probably got 4 teams near the top from what we think right now. You've got Canandaigua and you've got Victor, guys who are going to play physical, run the ball on you, and then you've got Schrader and East who are going to be more athletic on the outside, passing the ball down the field. So depending how those teams match up in the playoffs, the brackets, the weather, things like that, we'll play a lot as to how the sectional bracket shapes out. Moving on to our Eyes on You team, a team that is catching our attention, a team that deserves your attention. Carl, who do you got your eyes on this week?
I got my eyes on the Thomas Titans. I was at the game last night where they took down Penfield, and Penfield is one of those teams who's physical. They hit you in the mouth. Adam Shimdry, boy, when I tell you at quarterback, he out there looking just to punish dudes with the ball. I mean, last week I saw him at RH, and he was just looking at DBs like, who won it next? Like, he was those type of guys. And at times, he was giving it to the Titans. But then by the end of the game, they stuck their face in the fan, and they were bringing them down to the ground. Want to give some flowers to Levi Kulik, the quarterback. That name sounded familiar, and I know why. His, I believe, older brother Jackson was a nice basketball player on the court. He's now a Damon hooping now. But nonetheless, 185 yards through the air, 2 tutties. I don't want to say it's Schrader-like, and we'll see it next week, but they can throw the ball a little bit. They're very confident, quick bubble screens, quick hitches. Like, they have no problem if they have to just throwing the ball to go win the game. Sean Marlin also had the game-sealing pick as Penfield tried to go the length of the field to go win the game at the end. Also had a touchdown through the air. And then Marco Morelli, 2 tutties on the ground as well. Thomas lost last week to Victor. The game was semi-close. It was 20-10 at half, and then Victor did Victor-type things in the second half. But this is a team who may be in that second tier of Class A who can make some noise. And, you know, sometimes how the way the ball falls in football, you can make some things shake. But Thomas, I was impressed. You can always pass the ball in high school. You got my attention when you can do that. And they had a really impressive come from behind win over Penfield. It was really, really impressive.
Yeah, Thomas, 2 years ago with Eli Adams at quarterback, could do some really fun things. Looks like Cooley can do the same for them this season. And like you mentioned, you know, Penfield, it's a feisty squad. It's a physical squad. It's a Class AA squad. So coming into this game, it's always a bit of a dice roll to see when you get, you know, a decent Class AA team come down and play a good team in Class A. You never know how those teams are going to square up. And for a second, it looked like Penfield was kind of going to pull away, but Thomas showing a lot of heart, a lot of determination. And as you alluded to, they've got that matchup with Schrader next week. Always a fun rivalry game. Always, you know, a battle, you know, for the key to the city, as I like to call it. So they're going to be getting up for that one. They're going to want to prove that, you know, that they're the top dogs in Webster.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be at that one. So let's bring out the fireworks, and we'll see over under 500 passing yards for that one.
My eyes on you team is a team that really shined last week. The Arcadia Titans, specifically Deshaun McClellan. They came back from down 3 scores against Spencerport to win 39-38 in this game. So, you know, they scored 39 points, 6 touchdowns for those at home. Deshaun McClellan scored every single one of those 6 touchdowns. Mr. Deshaun McClellan had 19 carries for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. 4 receptions for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. He opened the game with a kickoff return for a touchdown from 75 yards. And he had a punt return touchdown from 73 yards away, where there are 11 people on a football team for each team. I think he broke 13 tackles on that punt return touchdown. He broke a tackle earlier in the play. He had to do so much bobbing and weaving and getting behind his blocks that those guys were able to get back in the play, and he was able to break their tackle again. It was just unreal how much Deshaun McClellan went off in this game against Spencerport. I got there at 6:57. They started the game early, so I missed the opening kickoff return. I'm blaming Spencerport for that, 100%. Spencerport came down and scored 3 times in basically 3 straight possessions. They had a punt block for a touchdown. I was like, okay, you know, Arcadia is fun, but, you know, Spencerport, you know, they're going to just take care of business, I get back to the station, and I saw that Arcadia won. And then after the game, I was watching the huddle, you know, the varsity media feed to write this highlight. I was annoying the heck out of Carl because every 3 minutes I'm like, Carl, stop what you're doing. Watch this highlight. Look what he did on this play. Look what he did on that play. Look what he did on this play. It was incredible. Deshaun McClellan put on one of the best all-around performances that I've seen. And speaking of all-around, he does it on defense too. He had 11 tackles, 3 tackles for a loss, a pass breakup. Carl, you were at his game last night. He had an interception. So Deshaun McClellan, he was our player of the week. And I just wanted to give him even more love on our podcast here because that man is just, he's a fun football player. That's just putting it lightly.
Yeah, man. I don't know what happened week 1 because I was at Arcadia week 1. I can't off the top of my head remember what happened. But once I heard about what he did last week, I was tuned in to see what he was going to do. And that pick at the goal line was really, really impressive. And then when he got the ball, you can tell that he got some juice to him. Now, Canandaigua has a really good defense, so they limited him a little bit. But he got some juice. And like you mentioned, that highlight was stupid. And to put it nicely, man, it was just he made things happen where it looked like he was playing Pee-wee. Like, I honestly felt like he was back. He, in his mind, thought he was back in, like, 5th grade again. Like, that's how he really was out there playing ball, man. He doing that against high school kids. Really, really dope player, man. I can't wait to see how the rest of his year shakes out.
Yeah, it was Bo Jackson and Tecmo Bowl-esque, just like going, you know, back weaving and this and that and all that. Yeah, And you mentioned what they did in week 1. The Arcadia Titans, they've played 3 games this season. They've all been 1-point games so far this year. They beat Gates Chili in overtime, stopping a 2-point conversion. As we mentioned in week 2, they beat Spencerport by a point, where Rangers had a good 2-point conversion play, just ended up incomplete pass, so they won that game. And then last night they lost a slug match to Canandaigua 7-6. So you want to talk about a team that knows how to, they're going to come to sectional playoff games. They're going to be like the Minnesota Vikings. They're going to be a 1-score game every single time. And we just see what happens in the playoffs. And they're going to be a fun team, especially in Class A this year. Not every team is going to make the playoffs. There's only 8 teams that are going to make it in Class A. They didn't break it up in Class A. They didn't break it up in A1, A2. Everybody's in Class A. So you're probably going to have a 500 record of that, something in that nature, to make the playoffs this year. Those close wins are going to be really important to get them playing in postseason football.
You ain't got to worry about Arcadia being battle tested. I'll tell you that. They're gonna be ready come November.
All right, we've got some great games coming up for you. Both tonight, we're not going to make this one. We could have been our game of the week, but by the time we get this out there, it'll be done. HFL Batavia tonight's going to be a great game. But we got some more games coming up for you on the slate. Carl, what game do you have your eyes on in the next coming days?
Yeah, we're gonna go down to Class C. ERG is gonna host Le Roy, I believe, next Friday night at home, like I just alluded to. ERG, you saw him week 1, I believe. Some dudes. Ben Newman at quarterback, Miles Cavanis out wide, Noah Mather, Kadero Sneed. He got some weapons, right? Le Roy, on the other hand, first 2 games, they want to combine 55-13. So I want to see, is it ERG and Attica and the rest of the Class C, or can Le Roy hang around? I know they've had some really strong teams in the past who are maybe physical to a certain extent, never really getting blown out. They're always going to hang around in their games. So I'm interested to see, can Le Roy muddy the game up and bring their own type of swagger and flair to the game against ERG. And once again, ERG got dudes, so I just want to see how that works out in its own right. So next weekend, Class C matchup, Le Roy traveling out to ERG. Should be a good one.
Yeah, and with that game being on Friday, we should have some time to maybe even hype up that matchup some more next week, especially if East Rochester Gananda can go into Attica, the #1 team in the state, knock them down. So that game's going to have a lot of hype around it next week if that can happen. And Le Roy's got Lions Sodas tonight at home, which is another good squad that gave East Rochester Gananda not a run for their money, but they played them physical and tough. They've got, we talked about them a little bit last week. They've got some guys. So especially if those 2 teams can both pick up wins this week, that is certainly one we're going to have our eyes on next week. I'm looking to the volleyball courts for my game of the week. I'm going to a boys volleyball showdown between Fairport and Penfield. That game is going to be on Monday, the 18th. And I specifically picked this game kind of just to talk about Fairport for a brief moment, because if I didn't have so many football teams I want to talk about, I would make them my team of the week, my eyes on you team of the week. So far, the Fairport Red Raiders on this young season, they beat McQuaid in 4 sets, 3-1. Really powerful team. They've had great success in the past. They beat Webster, the Webster Lakers, 3-1. Last year's state runner-up, Class A, Division I, brings back a ton of great guys as well. And then they swept Spencerport, 3-0. Last year's Class B, Division II runner-up, brings back a ton of guys. They didn't really have a lot of seniors on the roster at all last year. So Fairport, 3 massive wins so far early on this season. Some of the players who've been getting it done for them so far this year. In the match against Webster, Andrew Howe, 21 assists. Luke Sullivan with 9 kills and 6 blocks. In that Spencerport matchup, where it was a 3-set game, but Spencerport got to at least 20 in every single every single set. Noah Mabon, 10 kills, 4 blocks. Lot of sister and brother connections over there, Fairpoint, the Mebons. And then Nick Smith with 15 assists, both from the setter position. So it seems like they're running some sort of a 6-2 there. And then Penfield is no slouch as well. They've got a win over Victor so far this season. They've got a tough 5-set loss to Irondequoit, who has beaten some of these teams we mentioned earlier. So Irondequoit's really good. To take them at 5 is no joke. So Fairport and Penfield should be a really good battle. We'll get another good test for Fairport. And if they win again, I might just have to to elevate them to one of my team of the week statuses next week.
I love those squads who don't really care about the name on your jersey. They coming at you. I mean, you talking about what those teams did last year. Fairport does not care one iota. They talking about what you doing this year. What have you done for me lately? All right. And man, I mean, you talking about runner-ups and the state tournaments, and they don't care. Red Raiders, man. I mean, and also you got my attention with the Maybon thing. You know what you was doing right there. But yeah, all right then. I'm locked in to see what y'all doing from here on out. AJ, open my eyes to that.
The Fairport athletic director's got to send some sort of fruit basket to the Maybons and the Poochies, just, you know, developing quality athletes for all of their sporting districts. You know, it's a lot of family connections there, Fairport, who's getting it done for them. So good to see that. Good to see that as well. So that'll do it for us today on the High School Huddle. Next week, we should be back on Thursday. I can't think of a reason why we will not be on Thursday. However, you never know what's going to go on in this crazy world that we call. I think most of the games are on Friday night next week for high school football. So we should be back to our normal slate on Friday. But like you said, it was kind of fun having on Thursday. I got to say, it felt really weird waking up this morning, because I 100% thought it was Saturday. I could not comprehend the fact that it was Friday as I woke up after going to bed late at night. You know, we leave the station like 1:30. I had no idea what day it was when I woke up this morning.
I turned on the TV ready to put on Big Noon. And then I realized, it's Friday. Okay, ain't nobody playing today. Okay, whatever. So yeah, my mental clock wasn't locked in at all this morning.
Yeah, as we were doing our write-ups last night, I saw you looking over the college football schedule, because that's usually a routine, figure out what games you're going to watch, things like that. And I'm like, oh man, Carl's getting a real jump on it. Carl's getting a real jump on the game. So I don't think we have any good Friday. Actually, it's a pretty rough week for college football in general this week, isn't it?
Yes, but Deion Sanders coaches football. So, I mean, that's good enough for me.
Maybe the NCAA just paid Colorado State's head coach to say something stupid, so we actually have something to talk about this week, because, you know, I'm not gonna say conspiracy theories, things like that, but that produced produced a lot of great content this week.
Great content.
Does he have, like, I know he's got the specials. Does he have like a brand deal at this point? Because he's giving away like hundreds of sunglasses I've seen so far this week.
I mean, it makes sense. He just had the entire First Take crew with sunglasses on too. Hey man. What they say, any publicity is good publicity. I mean, sure, keep talking about my hat and my glasses. I'm gonna keep pumping them out and giving love to everybody. I mean, don't poke at the bear. Don't poke at the Rado Bears. Come on, man. Or Buffalo, excuse me.
I saw he gave one to everybody on his team. So, I'm rooting for. I like Deion. I'm rooting for Deion. It would just be hilarious for them to lose. Because if the Colorado State coach that goes, that would just. Great drama no matter what. Great drama no matter what.
I'm here for the theatrics. I'm not on the team. I just want to see drama. I'm here for that. That's what I'm here for. All right. I'm not an alum of Colorado.
The press conferences either way are going to be great, just as our High School Huddle show will be next week. It is time to break the huddle. For Carl Jones, I'm AJ Feldman. We will see you next week. You can find us RochesterFirst.com, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Thank you for listening. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.